All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Marketing Girly Summer. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. See some familiar faces. All right. Let me make sure I'm accepting everybody. Hi, Victoria. Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. If you guys want to go ahead and put in the chat where you're joining us from. And then we're kind of going to get to our travel portion here in a little bit. We're going to have two different kind of like speaking sessions. I'm going to share a little bit about remote work and travel. We have Taylor, who's over there. Taylor, you want to wave and say hi? Taylor,
Hello.
Taylor, Taylor also travels a bunch. And so she's also kind of going to share her experience doing remote work and travel as well. And you guys can do some Q&A with her. At the end, we're going to be giving you girls all a remote marketing job board. So we have an exclusive marketing job board that just has remote roles. And we're also going to have a way for you guys to connect with each other in case you want to travel, but you don't have a travel buddy. We're also going to have a little kind of directory and little area where you girls can connect after. All right. Okay. Hi, Susan. I see Susan coming from Toronto. Oh gosh, so many New York. Aurelie. Where's Aurelie? I don't know if I see Aurelie. Hi. Oh, there you are. Oh my gosh. I don't know why I didn't see you right in front of me. I was like, there's my fellow Austin. We have Kellen from Orange County. Kellen, I'm from Huntington Beach, so I'm not too far off. I was actually just there over the weekend. Much prettier, or so much nicer being at the beach than being here in the Austin heat. Okay, I'm gonna share my screens. I know I have some girls with your videos on and some girls with your videos off. It's totally up to you and what you do, but when we do the speaking portion, we'd love for your videos to be on, especially if you want to ask questions. So we'll be giving you girls plenty of time to ask questions to me or to Taylor on remote work and tips and how to make that a reality. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Actually, this is the wrong thing. One second. Okay, well, before we jump in and start going, in case you guys aren't familiar with Sky Society or this is your first time at a Sky Society event, we are a community for women in marketing. So we do all things around helping women start and grow careers in marketing. The biggest thing we have is our LinkedIn group. So if you're not in it already, we have a LinkedIn group called Sky Society Women in Marketing that has 15,000 women in it that all work in marketing. So if you're looking to grow your network, that's a really great place to start. We also have a podcast called Marketing Girly where we interview women in marketing and we share their career journey. So we interview women in marketing working at Kava, NFL, Vogue, Benefit, any type of company or industry. We are trying to like do them all. So there's a lot of really great episodes on there on sharing different women's career journeys. And then we also have an accelerator where we help women start careers in marketing. Those are the girls who actually hosted today's event. So if you girls also want to wave and say hi. Yeah, so they're the ones that put on today's event. So if you see them, give them a thank you. They're the ones that allowed this event to happen today. Okay, we're going to jump on in. I'm just going to start by kind of going over a couple of basics here when it comes to remote work. So most of you girls are here because you likely, ideally want to have some type of Euro summer. Maybe you want to go to Europe. Maybe you don't want to go to Europe. Maybe you want to go somewhere else. But I think that traveling when you're young is probably one of the best experiences you can have for yourself. But I think there's a lot of reasons why a lot of us don't do it. So we're kind of going to cover some of those things today. We're going to talk about remote work. We're going to talk about how to kind of start traveling, how to maybe make those like vision board trips actually real trips, and hopefully give you girls some actionable ways to make that happen. Okay. All right, so welcome to Marketing Girly Euro Summer. Okay, so just a reminder to stay until the end. At the end, we're going to be doing a giveaway. We're going to be giving away some Marketing Girly hats. We're going to be giving, that's going to be, I think we're going to have 3 winners for that one. You'll get a Marketing Girly hat and a resume edit session. We're also going to give everybody, so this is for everybody, will get access to the remote job board and our little directory to connect with other women in marketing who also want to travel. Okay. So our big question, can I really have a Euro summer? I feel like so we ended up settling on the name of the event Euro Summer because I feel like that's just been all over social media. And I feel like sometimes it looks really unattainable when you see social media influencers doing these elaborate trips and going to these incredible places, and you may be like wondering, well, like, can I do that too? Is that out of my budget? So I have here kind of like the biggest reasons why I feel like some of us don't travel right now. Maybe because traveling is too expensive. I don't have anybody to travel with, and I don't have the time to travel. I feel like these are the three biggest reasons. If you have any other reasons you feel like you haven't been able to travel, you can put them in the chat and I'll try to address them as well. But I know when I started my career or even when I was in college, I knew I really wanted to travel, but these were kind of the biggest three things that I found were the reasons why I wasn't actually doing it. So I'm going to speak a little to those things. I'm not going to do slides for the majority of the speaking, but the first thing I wanted to talk about is the finances piece. So anyone maybe not really traveling because it seems too expensive? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we all can agree on that one. So what I wanted to talk about specifically that's going to be a little bit different than Taylor is doing traveling in hostels. So one of the things I wanted to talk about really quickly are Selena hostels. This is not in any way sponsored by Selena Hostels. This has just been like my intro and my gateway into remote travel. So when one of my first remote travel trips I did, and now I've actually started doing this with my friends. We just went to Tulum this past winter, and all of us worked remotely in January when like Southwest does their flight deals. We all got a round trip flight to Tulum for under $200, and we all stayed at Selena's. Selena's are co-working hostels. So if you're wondering like, well, I don't know if I could take that much time off work, or I don't know if I'm able to travel and work remotely, that is probably one of my favorite tips that I love to share with girls is that there's actually a hostel network called Selena. In that network, all of the hostels have remote working spaces. There are also hostels that are not related to Selena at all, where you can also go and you can work remotely. So one of my biggest tips is if you are like, I'm really afraid to travel because I don't have the budget for it. That's probably one of my biggest tips is to try to find a hostel. I think I was really turned away from hostels because I thought they were really unsafe. Typically, I found that I love that brand just because they typically feel really safe. You might also do some research and find other brands that are really helpful. If anyone also knows any co-working hostel networks, you also want to share them in the chat. I think that's super helpful. But I also wanted to put that out there because I've had some of my best trips, and I do it with my friends now where we all go work remote. We'll all go to a fun location, and it's fun going with other girls that are also working because then we feel like, okay, we can balance, being on our laptops and also going out and enjoying the beach and having fun on the weekends, but not feeling like we have to go take a week off of work to make that happen. Okay. So that's like one thing I wanted to share first. I think Taylor is going to be a bit more of the expert. So Taylor, I'm going to go over to you. And then at the end, if anybody else has like any other questions, like specifically related to that, I just wanted to touch on that really quickly. The other thing I also wanted to mention before actually I passed it over to you, Taylor, is that if you do go work remote and you are going to different places, maybe you'll cover this as well, is to also make sure that you're always you're also double checking for Wi-Fi. I found that one of the things I think that I've come into, even at hotels, I've had issues is that I can't have enough Wi-Fi to do Zoom. So also if you are planning on traveling, and I like Selena again, because I can always trust that they're going to have Wi-Fi, but always make sure that you ask. You can even ask for them to send you screenshots of Wi-Fi speed to make sure that it's something where you can actually keep doing your work. Okay, Taylor, if you want to kind of share, Taylor has much more experience than me. So if you want to share some places that you've been, where you've gone, and your advice. And also, actually, before you do that, Taylor, if you want to introduce yourself and kind of share like who you are, what you do, we'd love to learn more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, hello everyone. It's really nice to see people's faces. If you're not on camera, I'd love to see your faces. I think it's a great way to connect, but if you don't feel comfortable, of course, all good as well. So yeah, I currently sit in San Diego. I've lived in and around California for the last 10 years. I was actually in San Francisco when COVID hit, and that is when I first started working remotely, but I've been in the tech space for the last 7 years, working remotely for the last four. And so within that time frame of working remotely, I've moved I think two or three times, and I want to say in the last 2 years since the world has kind of opened back up again, I am definitely someone that has really, really, really taken advantage of the ability that remote work gives you to be able to travel not just the country, but travel the world. And I think there's something, Natalie, that you touched on that I'll get to a little bit later, but just like the concept of travel. What is it? I know we're talking about a Euro girly summer, which is absolutely what I think everybody should have. But there's also so much travel, in my opinion, that you can do on a budget that, depending on where you're at in the world, you can absolutely attain. And so I'm just a really big proponent for taking advantage of those situations when you have them. So probably some of the more, I'll call them extravagant or more international spots I've been to in the last year. We went to Japan for about a week and a half. We managed to make it out to Costa Rica. I've been to Hawaii. Those were probably the more exotic, more vacation-like. And then I don't know if other people are in this phase of life like I am, but I think everybody I know is getting married at this point in time. And so having the ability to be able to go see those weddings and spend time with family and friends. I think at this point in the last year, I think I've been to about 15 or 16 weddings now, which is quite a number that I didn't expect. Certainly never expected to be able to make it to all of those, but I think that's why remote work can be so valuable, because it allows you to have the opportunity to attend those things and make those memories. And if I'm really thinking back on the last year or two that I've had, it's some of the best memories that I've made, and while also learning a lot in my career. And being able to balance both work and travel on a personal and professional level, I think are one of the more low key but important skills I've probably learned since the world changed when COVID hit. So, both highs and lows. As far as tips, and I'll try to keep this succinct because I feel like I could talk about the pros and cons of remote work and travel for forever. But when Natalie and I were speaking and she asked me to share some tips, I was thinking about what I feel like I would have wanted to know 4 years ago when I started this, and how I've gotten to a place where I feel like I'm balancing it really well. So the first one is, I talk about this a lot, and I talk about having discipline over motivation. When COVID hit, I was actually an SDR manager at the time. So I don't know if anyone here, has anyone here done SDR work at all? I know this is a marketing girly group, but has anyone looked at SDR work? And I can't really see that anybody's hands, but I see a couple. Okay. Uh, the SDR job is hard. If you don't know, it is one of the more difficult jobs to do in office. And when we went solo at home, it becomes 10 times more difficult because you are doing really difficult work. You are getting rejected day in and day out, and you're sitting in a room by yourself, lacking the camaraderie of people around you. And remote work can kind of feel like that, maybe not to that extreme in other roles, but it can isolate you. And so I think traveling really affords you the ability to have more connection, and to work on putting yourself in positions where you might be a little bit uncomfortable or you might have to challenge yourself. And those to me are really good things. But it's also really important, in my opinion, in order to do your job well and maintain the balance of remote work and travel and personal, making memories, is making sure that you're focusing on discipline over motivation. I used to say that to my team all the time. It's really easy to get up in a beautiful environment. Let's take Costa Rica, for example. It's really easy to get up, and if you're motivated to work for the day, it's easy to get the work done because you have that motivation. When I tell you, it is rare that motivation strikes me in a place like Costa Rica to get my work done. It just doesn't happen. Um, I'm in a spot that I've wanted to go to for years. The beach is steps from my hostel. The last thing you want to do is get on your computer and get some work done when you know that there's so many memories waiting for you outside the door. So I always go back to the idea that motivation is not the thing you should be looking for, it's discipline. For anyone that was an athlete at any point in their life or has hobbies that they've stuck to, you'll know that discipline is required to do something day in and day out. And so I always used to tell my team, really don't rely on the concept of motivation when you're traveling. It will not work for you in the long run. Truly, you will find yourself lacking motivation all of the time. You will find yourself saying, you know what, it's beautiful outside. Let me take today to go explore. I'll get my work done tonight. Cannot tell you the number of times I have done that myself. And I can promise you the work did not get done that night. Maybe you're better than I am, or maybe you're better than I was, and that's something that works for you. And if that is, that's fantastic. But if it's not, then we have to think about how do we create habits that are discipline based versus motivation based. And I think that brings me to more of my second subcategory tip, which is has anyone here read the book Atomic Habits? I see some nods. I see some hands. For the folks that aren't on camera, I hope people are raising their hands because it's a phenomenal book. Yes, there's one. Someone says, love that book, love James Clear. Yes. If you haven't read it, Bridget, read it. It is, I think, one of the more life-changing, professional, work-changing pieces of education and self-improvement, I think, excuse me, I think that I've read during this remote world, because I go back to this concept of habit stacking that you learn in this book in Atomic Habits all the time. I think it's probably the number one most used strategy that I will use when I'm traveling. Alyssa, please, you absolutely should. I would recommend it to every single person here who wants to travel and work remotely. For those that don't know, the brief concept of habit stacking is taking a habit that you already have and then stacking a new habit before it so that it creates this new habit. I would combine that strategy with a reward system. So this is what I do all the time when I travel. Again, I'll take the Costa Rica example. The first thing I want to do is wake up in the morning and go surfing. I'm not a great surfer, but I have fun and I like to go try it. Last thing I want to do is jump on my computer and, get some admin work done that I need to. But because I know my number one goal for the day is to go surfing, I will not allow myself to go surfing until I've completed whatever tasks that I have. That's a larger example of habit stacking and kind of a reward system. So you can even do it in small scenarios. I love my coffee routine in the morning. If there is work that I really am unmotivated to complete, I might tell myself, I really want my coffee, but I have to get this work done. I have to finish this documentation before I'm allowed to go get my coffee. So again, it can be even really small in those scenarios. And I actually would recommend kind of rewarding yourself and stacking those habits in really small ways, and doing it periodically throughout the day, allowing yourself those breaks, especially if you're in an exotic place that you're really excited about, again, like Costa Rica, hey, I'll get through these 2 meetings, I'll finish one admin task after it, and then I can go take an hour break and I can go walk down to the beach, or I can go take an hour break and, get a smoothie in Hawaii or something like that. So I think habit stacking, rewarding yourself for completing the tasks is going to be more discipline based than motivation. And that's probably the number one strategy that I leverage as I travel at all times. The second piece, that's a question that I've gotten actually quite a bit from people who I talk to about traveling and working, is the idea of, do you quiet travel or do you communicate with your manager? I think this is a really big question. There's going to be people out there that have different opinions than I do. However, I firmly believe that how you hold yourself, how you communicate to everybody around you within your working environment plays a big role in how you're perceived. It plays a big role in your own self-respect. It plays a big role in how you make connections throughout work. It plays a huge role in how that benefits you in the future as your career progresses. So I'm a really, really big proponent for open communication, for honesty and integrity, truly. I think a lot of people quiet travel. I think it's better to lean on the concept of communicating when you're traveling to the people that need to know. And, if you're in a position where you have a manager who just absolutely won't allow it, Maybe that means, either rehashing the conversation and trying to build a plan with your manager to get your work done while still allowing you to travel. Or maybe that's a toxic environment you don't want to be in. Maybe it's a sign to continue looking if you're really prioritizing travel. Um, but I just think communication, steady and open, honest communication is the way to go. And then having a plan with your manager about how you're going to get your work done is the best way that you can present yourself at work, because I have seen too many cases where I've had coworkers who have quiet traveled, and that I can promise you right now, it doesn't stay quiet. Most people will know, most people will talk about it, and unfortunately, I've seen some people's jobs be affected because they weren't openly communicating about where they were going or what they were doing. Not that you have to tell your manager absolutely everything. Hopefully, you don't, because I think that's a little bit more toxic. But having an open line of communication with your manager and your teammates and your coworkers is so, so important, so you can create boundaries, so you can A, get your work done, or if you're being realistic and you have events to go to because you're traveling, communicating that to your team who can maybe pick up some of your workload or help you out in some cases, can also really help. So I just think boundaries and communication is so important as you're traveling, um, because it not only shows your teammates that they can rely on you, it not only shows your teammates that you can be open and honest, it shows them that you can be communicative, it shows them that you can get your work done while prioritizing your personal life and your travel. Um, I think it also sets you up for success in the future, because you're showing people what you can do, and you're open with them, and people appreciate authenticity, especially these days when we're working remotely. You're not seeing people in office. All anybody has to judge you by is the way that you communicate and the work that you do. And so I think that that's just a really crucial part of traveling and working, because I don't think it can happen without it. So I've talked a long time. Those are, I think, my biggest strategies that I deploy while I travel. So I'll open up, maybe pass back to you, Natalie, or if we want to do a Q&A, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Actually, so if anyone wants to ask, you guys can like raise your hand, or you can just speak up, or you can put the questions in the chat. I'm curious for you. So I know you mentioned that you work a lot while you do these like trips and you're traveling. Do you bring anything with you specifically? So like, let's say you're going and you're traveling. I know a lot of us just have our laptop. Is there anything that you've invested in that has like really changed the game for you when it comes to remote work?
Ooh, it's a really great question. Um, I feel like if people don't have them by now, but noise canceling headphones, some really, really good ones. They're kind of a game changer for me. I can get pretty distracted pretty easily by people and environments around me. And so I have worked in hostile environments, which is really fantastic. But if I don't have something that blocks out kind of the noise, it's so easy for me to get distracted. And if you're an extrovert, you want to meet new people and you can, talk a lot. So that's definitely one. I
Real quick,
think,
I want to add to that real quick.
yeah.
For headphones too, one of the things that has helped me also so much is getting actually a headphone with a mic attached to it. I know it seems like really call centery, but there's actually ones you can invest in that are more expensive. I actually learned this from someone I met in a hostel, where she said, yeah, I can go take calls at a bar and no one can hear me because I have like a mic set up where my boss like doesn't, it's little, and hers was like a Logitech. I think hers was like a $250 headset. Like you don't need to like spend that much money on it. But if you do spend like $100 on like a really decent headset with the mic attached to it, let's say you don't really want your boss, like maybe you have to take a remote call from a restaurant or something, because it's kind of, you don't want to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't take this call unless I'm in a quiet room, which I know I felt before. I was like, I can't do a meeting unless I have like a perfect quiet room to do it in. That's also a really good thing to invest in. I have mine somewhere and I absolutely love it. And I will never forget. We were in Mexico and it was like a soccer game. I'm not a biggest soccer fan, but there was like all these people at this bar. It was so loud. Everyone was cheering because it was like Mexico playing, and she was just full on taking a meeting. And she was like, "Yeah, I asked them if they could hear anything in the background, and they said no." And I was like, and then she influenced me.
I love that. That's probably number one for me, to be honest, because I had the same thing. Especially when I was in sales, I'm in enablement now, but being in sales, so much of your job is being on Zoom and, having meetings internally. And so you do have to be online, you have to be present, you have to be on camera sometimes. And so, yeah, investing in some good technology, really, really, really crucial for that. Um, Outside of that, I think it's just the typical making sure that you have everything with you to be able to do the job, whether it's extra battery cords, multiple international chargers if you're planning on traveling internationally. I mean, those are kind of small common sense things that maybe you might not think about, but when you find yourself in a pinch and you're at 2% battery with no way to plug in, it can be quite a scary and stressful situation. So I think just all that type of technology has been uh, pretty crucial, more so from a learned experience.
Yeah, I've even one of the things I did to make travel easy, I have like a whole setup for my desk is that I have an extra laptop charger. I actually bought like I have like an extra camera, so that whenever I do travel, I don't have to like unplug everything and then take it with me. I kind of get to have all my portable charger, everything like all like a separate version of it, like how the beauty gurus do. They get like the mini travel size of all their makeup. You could do the same with your remote work setup and like have a little mini version with you to take places, because it absolutely does help. Even little things like I never really thought a mouse mattered a lot. I'm way more productive with a mouse. It may like be weird to have your laptop out somewhere and like also have a mouse with you, but it makes a huge difference for me in terms of being more productive. The other thing you also touched on like telling your boss. So has anyone ever quiet vacationed where you've like taken a vacation but didn't tell your boss? We're
To be
all
honest, I've done it.
good
I've done it.
students here. I also remember, so when you travel remote, you meet interesting characters. I met this guy who's like, yeah, you also meet people that just travel too much. Like I have a friend that I think he travels to escape problems. He's never in Austin. He's always traveling. But I met someone else like that was at a hostel and they, were like, yeah, I work, he's like, he's always traveling. He's like, my company has no idea about it. So I've also met like the flip side of it. I would lean more towards Taylor of like, you don't want to get caught in a lie. And I also know, like, I appreciate it if someone who works for me will like tell me that they're leaving. Not that because I don't like care at all. But it's like helpful for me to know what time zone that you're going to be working in or if that's going to be changed. But I also know like if you're like afraid of telling your company for whatever reason, I would probably like test the waters by like asking them about a trip or something. It's kind of like there's also like the phrase like you don't want to ask and then them tell you can't do it versus like you never ask, then you like you don't know that it's a no. But a lot of companies, the reason they would say no is because of like tax purposes of like what comes into like when they pay you. It actually depends on like where your location is. So that's the reason why a lot of companies, not all, a lot of companies I know like don't really care. It typically only becomes an issue if you're going to be somewhere for a really, really long time, and that would impact that side of things and make things a bit more complicated for HR. But normally I
I
don't think
do
it's an issue.
I do know people as well, depending on the industry that you go into. I know some folks that work in the government space where you just physically cannot work outside of the United States, and when that's the case, or if that's the case, just, I say, hey, go take your PTO, go on vacation, don't even bring the laptop, just have a fun time and worry about work when you get back. Sometimes there are
Yeah.
environments where you just can't get around that, but that's fine too. I think one of the cons of remote travel was you're still working while you're on vacation. And so how do you get stuck not feeling guilty about maybe I should be online now and not, being outside enjoying where I'm at. So that's kind of a mental balance that you have to work with as well. Again, I think there's more pros than cons, but again, I just think communication is the biggest positive that you could have and the biggest skill that you can build.
Yeah. I also think one of the things that helps, because it is difficult when you are traveling to stick to working. The biggest thing that's helped is traveling with someone else that is also working. That is honestly the
Mm.
biggest motivator. When I travel with my family, it is so hard to work because I've got younger siblings. None of them are working. They're all having fun. They're not doing anything. Like it's so much easier versus if you go travel with somebody that does work, it's so much easier when you both are like, we're going to work together, even if you're working on different things. Just having somebody else there that is also working is a huge difference. Like I've gone, yeah, whenever I travel with my family, I basically just like, no, I'm really not going to be doing so much work because no one else here is working versus, and I go with my friends, like I mentioned, this Tulum trip. It was so great because pretty much all of us worked remotely. But I could tell there was one girl that she had to take PTO. Like she is a fitness trainer, so she obviously can't do that remotely. And I felt bad because she was like really wanting to go do things that we couldn't do them with her because all of us were working. So if you are going to be traveling, try to like if you have to take PTO, it's probably best to travel people that also have to take PTO and like are not going to be working because it's going to be more fun because they're going to be more free. But if you are working, it is really nice to be able to travel with people that are also working. Like I know Taylor, you mentioned you travel with your boyfriend and he also works remote. It's just so much nicer because you're going to be so much more motivated to actually get the work done.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely do hold ourselves accountable when we travel together because we have
Yeah.
to. I mean, we have to get our work done. And you're right, it is nice to have somebody in the same capacity. Um, I will say as well, I think that remote travel and depending on what your PTO, model is, whether it's unlimited or if you have a certain limited number of days, um, utilizing that strategically is really helpful as well, right? I've gone on vacations where I worked remotely Wednesday, Thursday, and I took off Friday because I just knew that we wanted to do something early in the day on Friday, and I was going to have to move a bunch of things around to try and get things in. It was just going to be too much of a headache for me. So instead of taking 3 days off, I took one day off. I'm not someone that has unlimited PTO, so I definitely have to be strategic about where I place them. But I think that is also such a great part about being able to work remotely is that you can really strategically place your PTO and work remotely at the same time and still have a really solid vacation. I think I did that in Costa Rica, where I pretty much did half and half. I had, half the days I worked remotely and half the days I just decided I'm going to close the laptop, not worry about it, take PTO because it's there for a reason too, right?
Yeah. Any questions on anything? Is there anything that you girls feel stuck on when it comes to like really wanting to go do, a big trip, but you feel like you can't, or just like any questions at all related to like remote work or travel?
Since you've had more remote work experience and balancing that work-life balance aspect of it, have you acquired any more like soft skills that you didn't expect, and how have you been able to use them? I don't know, like let's say in an interview or to further like pitch yourself to an employer.
That's a really good question. 100% yes. I think that putting yourself in maybe sometimes some challenging or uncomfortable situations really requires quite a level of self-control, patience especially, um, you know, especially when you're traveling on a budget. I can't tell you the number of times I've decided to maybe suffer a little bit and take a red eye because I was going to work on Tuesday and I was going to work on Wednesday, but I really wanted to travel somewhere. I mean, you're tired, you're running on 3 hours of sleep, something happens. Something always happens, especially in airports, on airplanes. And it tries your patience quite a bit. I think after dealing with so many scenarios that are out of your control, that's such a parallel to work. I mean, and I think that's such a hugely valuable story to be able to tell employers or to be able to talk through in an interview, um, is how you develop that patience, how you communicate with strangers, how you deal with stress. I mean, so much of that is so relevant to what you go through in a work environment. Um, that I think, yeah, as you go and as you travel more, if you're really actively thinking about it, hopefully you're actively trying to improve in it as well. And I think that that's a story that you could tell for the rest of your life, because we all know we've probably all worked with somebody that could work on those skills, and traveling I think really helps you with that. Good question.
Thank you.
Also, one thing to add to that is if you are planning on bringing up that you like to work and travel in an interview, also be prepared to answer questions around how you balance it and have a good answer. Because from the employer side, their concern is that if you're going to travel, you're going to be working less, you're going to be distracted, you're not going to be doing as good of a job. So if you are going to bring it up, also be prepared to kind of address like, you know, how you approach remote work or how you approach remote work and travel. So that way it's something that they're not concerned of, that, you know, if you're going to be traveling and working, that you're not going to be as productive. Tierney asked, do you have any tips for finding remote roles when so many companies are wanting people back in the office? I'll answer. Well, first, I'm going to share with you girls in just a second a remote job board that we have. Sky Society, every week, if you're in our LinkedIn group or you are subscribed to our newsletter, we share lots of jobs every single week. We try to do a mix of remote and in-person jobs. I honestly find that there's not a huge difference in remote and applying to remote jobs versus applying to in-person roles. I feel like some people think that maybe one is harder than the other. We have a lot of girls that get hired out of our accelerator. I honestly see a mix of remote and in person, and I don't think there's anything like super specific one person does to get a remote role or an in-person role. The only thing that would be beneficial is if you're working remote, if you do have any type of remote experience. So again, like an employer can kind of trust that you know how to handle responsibility, you know how to stay accountable, you know how to be self-motivated, because those are all things that are really important when you're working remotely. There are also some job boards that specifically share remote marketing jobs. They're not always the ones that I'm like most likely to recommend, because they also sometimes I feel like they're just a little bit more harder to navigate because they're not as like clean as LinkedIn. But LinkedIn and Indeed both have filters. You can also filter by remote jobs and it'll only show you remote roles. I don't know if Taylor, you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably pretty spot on. You might even, maybe the only thing I would add is even kind of broadening your search to just find companies that are supporting remote work, you know, kind of taking yourself out of the marketing niche for a second and just looking at it at a company level. If you find remote work in the finance segment, there's probably a high chance that you're going to find remote work in the marketing segment within that company. So it might just make the search a little bit easier if you broaden that first and start with remote promoting companies and then look at what they have available within that department.
Chidera asks, as someone who works remotely and is maybe open to career advancement and networking opportunities, what are tips to leverage a vacation as a potential avenue to find that? And has there been an instance where you unexpectedly came across such during vacation? I would say that's where hostels are like the best place. That's why, again, I like told you girls, Selena, one day maybe they'll sponsor Sky Society. That day is not today, but I absolutely love them, specifically because everybody that is there has a job, like they're digital nomads, versus if you go to other hostels, you're going to have a mix of people that are like in college trips versus like just all different types of mixes of people. But I think generally that's what I love about a hostel, like the hostel environment, is that a lot of people there have similar values, specifically at Selena's. When I've gone and I've worked there, if you go alone, you honestly meet more people than if you go with other people. I've also found that as well. I find that like I end up making connections when I'm like by myself, because when you're with your friends, you're talking to your friends, you're hanging out with your friends, you're spending all your time with your friends, you know, versus like if you're by yourself, you're, you know, maybe more likely to like strike up a conversation with the other person that's by themselves. So I think absolutely. And that's what I also love, is that you get to meet so many people. Like I told you about the guy who's like literally like he listed off everywhere he's been. It was absolutely crazy. And his company has no idea he's doing all of this. I was in shock. He's like has this like elaborate system to keep it a secret. And then you also have other people that are like their companies have like very open like work travel cultures. So I think it's a great way to meet people. Also, if you do freelance, you could also figure out ways to make it a write-off if you have, you know, your own LLC. If you are going to travel, potentially do some work there, you can kind of write off some of those trips. So that can also be like a good way for you to maybe be more incentivized and also get a tax write-off in that way.
I don't know if this is an answer to that question, but it just makes me think about too, you know, you get people that are naturally extroverted and also people that are naturally introverted. Sometimes I like to think I'm an extroverted introvert. So when I travel, I love meeting new people, but I sometimes am not always going to be the person who reaches out to someone sitting by themselves and tries to make that connection. I sometimes I can get a little bit in my head, maybe feel a little bit insecure. I don't want to bother people, but I think especially in a hostile environment, Natalie, I think why it's so valuable is because you have to remind yourself that most people in those environments are there for the exact same reason, or they have the exact same mindset where they really value travel, but they're also working and they're living a very similar experience to you in that moment. And so just kind of opening up to them or connecting with them on that level is a lot easier than you might think. And so I feel like I highly recommend putting yourself in a situation where if you find that to be a little nerve wracking, definitely challenge yourself to make that connection and have those conversations because you'll find that they're a lot easier than you think. And, I think it's such a great way to open up any sort of network and people that you may or may not leverage or work with in the future. Everybody is a potential bridge and you never know who you're going to work for. You never know who you're going to work with. So it's all kinds of possibilities.
And you also meet people in random ways. I met people like randomly in
Mm.
lines for coffee, and it's just as you have to just be open to kind of having conversations with people. Obviously, there's as a girl, you have to also be careful. So yeah, you
Yeah.
can't trust everybody. But if you're just open, right? If it's just a conversation, sometimes with conversations that you realize this person's weird and I'm afraid, or I'm not going to talk to them. And there's other ones that you're like, this person's cool. Um, Okay, we have like a couple more in the chat. Really quickly, I want to answer. Do you have any tips for cheaper flights? Scott's Cheap Flights, I absolutely love. It's now called Going. You use them too,
Going.
Taylor.
Yep.
You can also split. I think it's not that expensive for the year. And you can like split the login with friends. Also, if you're in the accelerator, we have a class login actually, if I'll share with you. That's really amazing. And then Skip Lag, if anyone's used Skip Lag. Borderline, it's not illegal, but it's also not the best thing.
Yeah.
But it basically will be like, let's say you're traveling from here to New York. You're trying to go from LA to Austin. It may book you on a flight from LA to New York with the layover in Austin, and you have to get off at the layover. So technically, like airlines don't like that you do that. And if they make you check your bag is going to go to New York, even if you want to get off in Austin. So, but if you're just taking like a carry-on thing, Skip Lag is super helpful. But the other one is like Scott's Cheap Flights. You can just sign up for email notifications and they will email you whenever there's a deal. Like you can kind of flag different places. You can put what airports you're interested in going out, and they're always like posting deals to different places. And so if you're flexible with like your timeline, it's great.
I also have to plug maybe an unpopular opinion, and I think I'm just abnormal, but I love a good road trip. I cannot neglect the idea of a car. Um, it is one of the best things because, sometimes it's as expensive as a cheap flight, and sometimes it's way better. It's going to take you a lot longer, but I went to Las Vegas over Memorial Day weekend in May. Again, I'm abnormal, but I woke up at 4 a.m. I left San Diego to drive to Las Vegas so that I could make it in time to have all my meetings in Vegas before I went out that night. Granted, again, I am someone that will prioritize my travel. I don't mind a long road trip. I love using road trips to listen to podcasts as well. So I always feel like it's a significant use of my time anyway as a learning experience. But I just want to say that because whenever we talk about travel, a lot of people talk about flights and finding cheap flights. And, that's obviously really, really doable. But yeah, don't neglect the things that are 5 to 10 hours away from you. 10 hours, I know, is a long drive. I'll do it. But uh, I think it's still part of that ability to travel and it can really get you some awesome experiences as well. So definitely don't forget that one.
I love that one. This one may be more for you, Taylor. Stephanie asks, how do you navigate PTO during flying or travel days?
Yes. Good question. So this again is what are you willing to do to travel? Red eyes are tiring, but honestly, for me, I just find that I will take a cheap red eye over using PTO that I might not want to leverage. Granted, that's me. I'm willing to make that sacrifice, and I can do that. If you're not someone that wants to do that, I also think that's perfectly fine. Only you know your uh your level of comfort. Only you know how far you're gonna stretch yourself to be able to travel and what you want to prioritize. Some people just really want to prioritize being well rested, and I completely understand that. Um, so I think it's just about finding your comfort level as far as what you're willing to do in order to make that travel happen. If you are just not someone who can do a red eye, don't do it. You can also take half PTO days. I think most companies allow that possibility. So if that's an option, do that as well. Or, and this is probably towing the line of quiet vacationing, I definitely have done days where I've gotten up early and I've worked from maybe 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. to catch a flight at 4. And I've just, I've gone off early for the day. My boss is okay with that, so that's good for me. But again, it's because we've communicated that that is something that I can do. I get my work done in the time that I've allotted myself, and she knows about it, so I don't feel any guilt. But yeah, I try and use as little PTO as possible because I like to save them for larger trips where I'm really tuned off from work. But if you have to use it, use it. I mean, that's what it's there for too. If it's a stressful travel day, use the PTO.
Okay, we have one from Diane. Are there any remote marketing, PR agency, job boards that you would recommend? I don't know if anybody knows one specifically. You can put it in the chat. You can Google like remote marketing, remote job boards, and you'll see a couple. I don't know. Yeah, I'll defer to somebody else. Obviously, like the one that I'm the most involved in is the Sky Society job board because that's what we're creating all of the time. But I do know that there are some specifically for that. So if anyone has a recommendation, put it in the chat. Oh, thank you, Maria Jose. She replied to your message, Diane. Okay, how can an entry-level candidate stand out when applying for remote roles? I get asked all the time how to stand out when applying to entry-level marketing jobs. I think someone else asked if it's like more difficult to get an entry-level remote role. I don't think it's more difficult to get an entry-level remote role as it is to get a mid-level remote role. It's just like companies are remote or they're not remote. They're either like have remote teams or they don't have remote teams. Sometimes as you prove yourself at a company, they may start allowing you to work remotely more. Like they may want you to work in person first, and then they may be like, you can work remotely a couple days a week. I think those are great questions to ask in an interview. Like what, if it says in person, you can even ask, like, do you ever allow your team to work remotely? Is that a thing that I can work up to? And then how to stand out when you are applying to remote jobs. My general advice for standing out is always to have a portfolio. I think especially now with digital marketing and with social, I think it's one of the best ways to stand out in an application. I think if you are trying to work remotely, I think having a really strong online personal brand for yourself is really important. Making sure that your LinkedIn looks really, really good, making sure that you have a solid resume, making sure that you have a portfolio, maybe you even have your own website, but kind of showing that you really do thrive in the digital space, I think is going to be the biggest thing that can help you. And then in terms of standing out, I would say if there's like one actionable item, it would be to build a portfolio.
I would add too, I'm such a big proponent for this if you feel comfortable, and hopefully you should. I don't think this is even just about remote roles, but I think it's valuable because so much of the success of remote work are your communication abilities, and your ability to kind of reach out to your coworkers when you need help, because we are so isolated. You're not sitting in an office environment. You can't ask the person next to you. So something that, always stood out to me when I was hiring is when a candidate would actually reach out to the teammates on LinkedIn on my team and maybe ask them for 15 minutes of time just to see if they would talk to them about the culture of the company, the role, et cetera. And so as a hiring manager, I always found that really valuable. And that always stood out to me because it showed me that this was a candidate who wanted to learn about the role. It was a candidate who was willing to go out of their way to connect with people that were on the team. It means they did their research on our team. And that to me was always just a standout candidate because, not a lot of people do that. So I think that's one of my number one recommendations is if there's an open role, do your research on the team, find people on LinkedIn that are maybe connected to that team. Don't be afraid to send them a message and just say, hey, I just applied for this role. I noticed you're in X position. If you have time, would you be willing to speak with me for 15, 20 minutes just to ask you about your experience? But also, no worries if not, right? Their time is just as valuable. And so, if they don't respond, that's okay. But I think you would be doing yourself a great service and a great benefit if you reach out with that type of messaging. And you better believe that when they do say yes and they talk to you on the phone, they are 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10 going to their manager and saying, hey, I spoke with this candidate. And again, that's just another person talking about you in a potential hiring manager process. So I'm a really big proponent for that one.
I love that. Okay, we're gonna just do like 2 or 3 more questions, and then I'm gonna give you girls, we'll announce the giveaway winners, give you girls the job board and give you guys a chance to connect with other girls if you are looking for a travel buddy. Okay, do you have any advice on how to build relationships or rapport with your coworkers when working remote? That's a really good one because I feel like the biggest thing you miss out on when you work remote is how easy it is to build relationships with people when you're like in the office with them and you see them in person every day. I'll throw that one over to you, Taylor.
Yeah. Oh man, it is so tough. Well, I think it's a few different ways. One, obviously, when you first start in a new role, definitely take the time that you have to reach out to your teammates and coworkers, put time on their calendar, whether it's just 15, 20 minutes, just to have an introductory meeting. I think most people will tell you to do that. But I would say do it before it's prompted of you. And then also, don't be afraid to do it with people. How do I put this? That you might not think want your time, if that makes sense. So we do onboarding, and our CEO, our executive, they all, like, a lot of our executives will say, put time on my calendar. If you ever have questions or ever want to connect, please do. The number of times that new hires put time on the executive's calendar is probably 1 out of 20. I mean, almost no one does it. Either whether it's because you think that you shouldn't, you don't want to bother executives, what have you. Um, I think that that's such a huge step in building relationships and building rapport is, just if it's offered to you and executives are willing to connect with you, like, take them up on that offer. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So that's one. And then the other is jumping into an environment where you are celebrating the people around you. I think everybody really appreciates words of affirmation, whether it's their love language or not. But everybody really does like to hear the validation of the work that they're doing. And so if you are someone who is observing good work or someone has helped you out, I say don't be afraid to be public with that, announcement. If you have a Slack channel that's like celebratory, don't be afraid to put a communication in there to say, hey, I just want to give a quick shout out to so and so for helping me. It's been a month of learning, drinking from the fire hose. They've been so helpful. Share it publicly, share it with them privately, um, share it with their managers. I mean, the more that you can add to a culture and an environment of celebrating each other, the more you'll find that A, you'll receive that energy, and B, that's how you start to build that rapport and those connections and that network, because people love to feel appreciated. And obviously, hopefully, it's all coming from a genuine place, like it should be. We don't want it to be something that we don't mean. But I mean, that's just the best way I think that we continue to communicate with each other when we're lacking the body language and the in-person communication is just recognizing the work that we do, I think.
I love that. Okay, I know I keep seeing more questions in the chat. I'm just gonna do one more because I think it's a quick one. Jessica asked, are there any credit cards you recommend that are good to earn flight points that can make traveling more affordable?
The Chase Sapphire
I was gonna
Reserve.
say the same one. That's
Yeah,
what everybody always says.
it is. Or the Preferred, because I think the Reserve has a bit of a higher annual fee. So if you're, kind of budgeting yourself and you want to try it out, I think the Preferred is just as good. But yeah, Chase Sapphire, regardless of whether it's Reserve or Preferred, they just do it the best. They have so many point opportunities and a lot of lounges that you can access across international airports. I think there's some American Express ones too that are really great, but I'm a Chase gal.
Yeah, in Austin, they just opened up a lounge for the reserve, and you can like go in and go get free food before your flight, which is really nice. It's like a little healthy like salad. I forget what it's called, but they make like all fresh foods. You can get you can get like a chia seed pudding, a salad, like a bowl or something like that, and they have like free drinks and stuff. And different airports you go into, you may get like a $50 credit to go to a certain restaurant. While you're on the airport, you can get like a free meal or like have access to any of the lounges. And it also gives you insurance. Like you guys all saw the huge flight cancellation that just happened, I'm sure, on TikTok. I got stuck in that. My flight got delayed both ways, both times. It was awful. But if I actually don't have the card, I just have friends who have the card. If I did, that would have been covered by my card insurance versus me having to like eat those costs out of pocket. Okay, well, if you do have more questions, I'll post later this evening on our Instagram story, and you guys can like write in any other questions, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. Thank you all for attending and listening. Thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing your advice on remote work and travel. I'm gonna do our little hat giveaway, and we're gonna use ChatGPT because there's a lot of you guys on this call. So I'm going to share my screen so I can prove that this is going to be random. So we have, if you guys haven't seen our shop, we have some Marketing Girly Summer hats. So I have screenshots of the entire contact list, and I'm putting them into ChatGPT and asking it to randomly select 3 names. If you are the winner, email support@joinsky.co. Let me put that in the chat. And we will send you your prize. We'll let ChatGPT do its little thing. Okay, these are our 3 winners. If you were one of those people, congrats. I'll reach out to send you girls your hat, and then also to schedule your resume edit. You'll get a free resume review. Again, the email is support@joinsky.co. Also, if anyone's in social media and you do giveaways for like stuff like this on social, I know someone said I didn't know you could do this with ChatGPT. It's the best because I don't have to like individually count names. But yeah, if you guys want to just email support@joinsky.co, or if that email's too long, you can just message me on LinkedIn, and we'll coordinate you getting your prize. The other thing I'm going to share with you, I'm going to put this in the chat right now, is this link. If you click on that link, that has the remote marketing job board. There's 3 things on there. So at the top, you'll see the remote marketing job board. There are 50 remote marketing jobs that are on there. All of them have, I think, 3 or fewer years of experience. We try to prioritize marketing jobs that don't require a lot of experience because we know that's mostly where our community is. So you can access that job board there. If you scroll a little further, you'll see a form. If you do want to meet other girls and like let's say you want to travel but you don't really have a lot of people to travel with, or you're just looking to meet other girls that also want to travel, there's a form there. Fill that out. Underneath, your contacts will pop up on the board on the bottom, and then you guys can reach out to people that are also interested in travel that also went to this event. So it's totally optional if you want to do that, but you can fill out that little form. And if you keep scrolling, you'll see like it's an empty board now, but that's because we just did the event. But as you girls start to fill it out, you guys can connect that way. And again, that link is in the chat. Huge thank you to our accelerator graduates. We had a graduating class this week and last week for throwing this event. Thank you girls so much. We appreciate you, and huge thank you to Taylor for coming on as our guest. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your advice and your tips. I see Nana asked, would you do an event in Austin again? We're going to be doing more in-person events again, so keep an eye out for that. We're hopefully going to do one in August in Austin in the next month or 2. And again, if you guys are not in our LinkedIn group, but you want more from Sky Society or to attend more of our virtual events, this one was not like a networking one. Normally we do like networking ones that are breakout rooms too. So if you want to kind of chat with girls and meet more people, we do a bunch of fun events in there. That group is completely free to join. And again, we have about 15,000 women in marketing in that group. Any last questions before we jump off?
I'll say really quickly, thank you all so much for having me. This was lovely. I'll just put my LinkedIn here in the chat. If anyone wants to connect, please send me a connect. And I genuinely mean it. If anyone has other questions or just wants to chat over the phone, I am always available. I love connecting with people. I love networking, and I'm a huge proponent for more women in tech. So the more that I can make that happen, the happier I'll be. But it was lovely to meet everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you again to our accelerator graduates, and congratulations on graduating. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.